It was a few summers ago, and I was still living in my childhood home when my parents did something unthinkable. They left for a weekend without me. I was 17, and they were the kind of people who never took breaks, never left the house unattended. So when they actually left, it felt unnatural, but I didn't question it. I called my then girlfriend MJ and invited her to stay over. The idea of having the entire house to ourselves felt too good to be true. MJ had this spark of chaos in her, always pushing the limits. That thrill was intoxicating, dangerous even. When she saw the glow of the pool outside, she got that wicked glint in her eye and said we should skinny dip. I hesitated, but she convinced me. The moment was electric, us floating under the stars, warm water against the chill of the night air. It was surreal, almost too perfect. The pool faced large bay windows that gave us a full view into the house, lit up like a dollhouse. That connection to the inside used to comfort me, until it didn't. As MJ chatted beside me, I glanced at the windows and froze. On the far wall of the living room, a shadow moved, subtle, deliberate. Not from outside light, not a trick of the pool. It moved deeper into the house, like someone was watching and then retreating. My blood ran cold. I whispered to MJ to get out quietly and hide in the pool house. She didn't ask questions. Her grin was gone. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and crept through the house. Every room I entered made me feel like I was walking into a trap. The house was wrong. A chair was pulled out slightly. A picture frame crooked. A mug I didn't use sitting out. Small things, almost like someone had been living in it while I was gone, but no one was there. Doors locked, windows sealed. Still, the air felt charged, like something was just barely out of sight. I finally gave in and called the police. They searched, found nothing. No footprints, no entry, no intruder. They left us there alone at 4 a.m. I heard it again. Floorboards creaking upstairs, footsteps. Slow, intentional, coming down the stairs. I burst from the room, knife in hand, and found the front door wide open. Whoever had been inside was gone. But that wasn't the end. The next morning, every kitchen knife was missing. Every single one. They'd also taken random things, watches, electronics. But it was the knives that stayed with me, that chilling absence, like they'd left a message just for me, something I could never decipher. My parents were shockingly calm when I told them. Maybe they'd seen something like this before. I'll never know. But to this day, I still wonder how that person got in, and where they were hiding as I searched. This happened 2 summers ago, back when I was still dating Amanda. I've kept it to myself, not because I'm embarrassed or anything, but because I didn't want to risk accidentally doxing her or her family. Now that we've been broken up for over a year, I think it's finally safe to tell the story. At the time, Amanda was working as a camp counselor for a summer program in the city. The camp wasn't close by about a 25-minute drive from her quiet, upper-class suburban neighborhood. Still, she loved the job for reasons I never fully understood. I always thought it was a little beneath her, especially given her bigger aspirations, but I wasn't going to be the guy to say that out loud. Her house looked exactly like what you'd expect from a family in that kind of area. Huge yard, 3 floors, high ceilings, and more than enough room to throw just about any kind of party. So when the camp counselors were deciding where to have their end of summer bash, Amanda's house was the obvious choice. I might be making it sound like this was her first time hosting a camp-related party, but it wasn't. It was just my first time being there for one, since I hadn't been dating her the previous summer. Her parents were out of town that weekend. They usually were, to be honest. I won't get too deep into their situation out of respect, but the family dynamic was strange. Amanda's relationship with her parents resembled 3 coworkers more than it did a family unit. Everything was transactional. It was obvious to anyone paying attention that all 3 were variations of the same narcissistic, insecure personality, despite how much they resented being compared to one another. That description might sound harsh. Her dad was actually pretty laid back, and I genuinely miss the guy sometimes. But anyway, moving on. The party itself was packed. Dozens of people filled the house and spilled into the backyard. The vibe was lively and fun, and most of the guests were friendly and easy to get along with except for one guy, Pete. From the second he arrived, I got a bad feeling. He was loud, cocky, and spent way too much time talking to Amanda. And it wasn't just casual conversation. He was full-on flirting, not even trying to hide it. I felt disrespected, but I didn't want to cause a scene. Amanda and I had been together for a while, and while I trusted her for the most part, she had a habit of being just a little too friendly with other guys. It had always been a sore spot. I knew that bringing it up would just start a fight, and I didn't want to seem insecure. So instead of confronting Pete, I came up with another plan. I decided to kill him with kindness. Every time he finished a drink, I handed him another. We joked around, talked, and before long he was drinking faster than he probably should have been. I don't look like a heavy drinker, but the Irish and Mexican in me gives me a ridiculously high tolerance. My goal was to get him so drunk he'd either make a fool of himself or pass out somewhere. Either way, problem solved. To my surprise, it actually worked, and faster than I expected. By midnight, Pete was completely passed out on the basement couch, drooling into a throw pillow. I felt smug, but Amanda wasn't fooled. She called me out, accused me of doing it on purpose, which I obviously denied. After some arguing, I admitted, sort of, that I might have had something to do with it. We went back and forth a little more, but it wasn't a huge fight. Just one more disagreement to add to our pile. Still, the whole thing left me feeling like I'd put a damper on the night. The party was getting louder and more chaotic. I needed a breather, so I stepped outside. The driveway was quiet and cool, a nice contrast to the noise inside. I was leaning against Amanda's car, staring up at the sky, when I noticed someone standing at the far end of the property. They were still, just standing under the faint glow of a street lamp. I squinted, trying to get a better look, but they didn't move. Something about that unsettled me. Maybe it was the alcohol, but I decided to approach them. I probably wouldn't have done it sober. I said, "Hey, can I help you?" trying to sound polite, but a little firm. The figure took a few slow steps toward me, then stopped. It was clearly a man, though I couldn't make out any features in the dark. He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Are your parents home?" That question threw me. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he said it, like he already knew the answer. Before I could respond, he asked again, this time using Amanda's parents' names. He knew who lived there. That turned my unease into full-on suspicion. I lied and said my parents were inside. Deep down, I suspected he knew I was bluffing, but I was hoping the lie would be enough to scare him off. He just nodded and said, "Okay," then turned and walked away. Right down the street, no car, no house nearby, just gone, swallowed by the dark. I stood there for a while, unsettled, but eventually shrugged it off and went back inside. I ended up in the basement playing ping pong with a few others. Amanda had a pool table upstairs. so most of the party was up there, which left the basement quieter. I wasn't feeling super social at that point anyway. Sometime later, I heard the doorbell ring. At first, I didn't think anything of it. It was a party after all. People were coming and going, but something nagged at me. Something wasn't right. As I stood there, lazily hitting the ball around, it hit me. Amanda had told everyone to use the back door. The front door wasn't even supposed to be used, and it had a doorbell. Whoever rang it had come to the wrong entrance. I excused myself and went upstairs. I was probably overreacting, but I needed to check. On my way past Amanda's room, I noticed she was passed out on her bed, totally unaware of the noise around her. That's when it hit me. I was probably the only sober person left in the entire house. I turned off her light and gently shut the door, then went to the front entryway. A girl named Bella was there, swaying on her feet. I asked if she knew who rang the doorbell. She was way too drunk to be coherent. Eventually, she slurred something about an old guy claiming to be a family friend who was returning something he'd borrowed. "You let him in?" I asked, panicked. She just shrugged and wandered off, probably to find someone to hook up with. I ran upstairs to Amanda's parents' bedroom, and my worst fears were confirmed. The drawers were yanked open, the jewelry boxes emptied, the closet ransacked. He had robbed them. I assumed he was gone. I mean, the stuff was clearly missing. He had what he wanted. I turned to head back downstairs, but caught movement in the mirror on the back of the door. Just a quick blur, someone ducking out of view. I spun around, too late. He tackled me to the floor before I even saw his face. The air was knocked out of me, and I couldn't breathe. He clawed at my shirt like he was trying to rip it off. Panic gave me the strength to push him off, and he took off, sprinted across the room, dove out the open window, and landed on the roof with a thud. I ran to the window and saw him drop into the side yard and vanish. I didn't chase him, wouldn't have caught him if I had. I just stood there, trying to catch my breath and process what had just happened. The damage was done. He was gone. I didn't want to babysit the rest of the night. I didn't want to be the guy who kicked everyone out either, so I called the cops, not to report the theft, but to ask them to help shut down the party. Most of the local officers knew Amanda's family, so I figured they'd be chill. And they were. They cleared the place out without arresting anyone or making it weird. After they left, I went downstairs, woke Pete up, and told him to find a ride home. He puked before calling an Uber. The next morning, Amanda had to call her parents and tell them what happened. They were furious, obviously, but Amanda didn't seem to care. She'd always been rebellious, like rules didn't apply to her. They didn't even bother calling the police. There were no cameras in the house, and they figured it wasn't worth the effort. I still don't know how that guy knew Amanda's parents were gone. Part of me thinks he knew them personally, or at least knew the family well enough to time it. Looking back, that night told me more about Amanda than I wanted to admit. Her detachment, her recklessness, all red flags I should have paid more attention to. But hindsight, as they say, is 20/20.